Let's take a look at the new renterswarehouse.com investment search. I put in Phoenix, Arizona, and I search. All right, so here it comes. This is the first ever real estate investment website with max inventory with the return on investment quoted on every property. So I'm going to change my price. Okay, so my minimum price is $125. That's pretty cheap. My maximum price is $175. So where am I able to get that kind of price point in Phoenix? I'm going to zoom out a little bit and see that, okay, look at this. So the northwestern part of the city is where those price points are. So look what I'm doing now. I'm able to zoom into here, and I can begin to see, by virtue of zooming in, what kind of ROI I'm getting in these different places. Okay, so here's a $139,000 house. Okay, go to the financials. This is showing a high net yield. Okay, but what is the 11.52 ROI? What is that? Well, that is the yield, the income that I'm making on the property, because I have no mortgage. That's the same as the cash on cash return, and it adds onto it for me my home price appreciation rate. Well, where did that come from? That came from a 20-year average of the county. The way this market performed during the last 20-year stress test was a 4.73 annual average. I love this chart because this chart shows you the way the market did behave during the stress test. It helps give you a sense of equilibrium and consistency of the market despite the stress test. It shows you seasonality, but it's also conservative. If you look at recent stories about Phoenix real estate, you'll see Phoenix home prices up 8%, but you don't want to use that number. You want to use a conservative 20-year average. So what that does is it goes into my financials at that rate. It adds my cash on cash plus my appreciation to come up with an 11.52 ROI. That is one hell of an ROI of a single family home in a city that is gaining population. Well, why do I think it's gaining population? Says who? Says the US Census. Guys, I got to tell you something. This is like a 15-year dream of mine coming true before your eyes. So if I start to cry, it's not because I stubbed my toe or anything. It's because telling that story the way I just did, like spiking it. Well, why is the population growing up? Well, why is population growing? Because we have a lot of inbound migration. The unemployment rate is fantastically low, and we have a very diverse job situation in this county. I know that you didn't know until you came to this website that you can get a discount by buying in the winter in almost every city in America because demand is lower in the wintertime because of the holidays, and because demand is higher in the springtime because of the race to get in before the school year starts. These are all learnings that you only get through what's called data visualization. This is data visualization. You look at it, what story does it tell you? How do you explain that? All right, now back to this again. What I love about this, now that we have ROI and we have a very common sense and explainable way of defining ROI, I can zoom in south of the highway. Got a dozen or so properties south of the highway. The ROIs are in the 9s. You see that? Got a couple of 10s, got an 11. Gives me a sense of what's happening south of the highway. I'm going to go now north of the highway. Well, look at that. Everything's in the 10s and 11s. Look at how, by virtue of moving the map and then observing what happened to the ROIs on the part of the map that I zoomed to, and then moving it, let's go east of this highway and see what happens. Okay, the cheap houses disappear east of the highway. All right, so now let me change my price points. 175 to 225. Anything showing up now? All right. And look what happened here. Price point went up. What happened to my yields? They went down. 9s into the 8s. What am I learning? Something very common sense. As the prices go up, the rents don't tend to keep up. And so therefore, when you buy a higher priced house, you get a lower yield. Let's take a look at what happens when I go 250 to 350. The yields went lower. Now I'm dipping into the 7s, 8s and 7s. right? I now know that in a lot of parts of Phoenix, I can go from anywhere in the 6s and 7s to higher priced property into all the way to the 10s and 11s when it comes to the lower priced property in Phoenix, where the job growth is strong, where the population growth is strong, and where the home price appreciation is above the national average. Boom. I am an expert. And actually, that brings me to one more thing I want to show you. I go back to this again. Okay. So here's one at a nice 9.9. Love it. Perfect. Right around 10%. This is a cash ROI, okay, meaning there is no mortgage on this. All right. When I go into the financials tab here on this house, here's this 5.17% net yield plus my 4.73. Now I've got these charts down below here. These are the charts that show that when I take this year one cash flow of $11,870 a year, I can see based upon my rent increasing by 2% and my expenses increasing by 1% that if I look out 10 years, my $12,000 winds up in 10 years becoming $14,700 based upon those assumptions. But do a search of rent increases in Phoenix right about now, and you're going to see that 2 is a really low number. It's probably more like 3. So it was 14,700. Now I can see that just based upon that one change, just based upon having confidence that what's happening today will continue, demand for rentals will continue, and I can bump my rates. I went from 14.7 to 16.6, my cash flow in year 10. All right. Based on 4.73% appreciation rate, which again is the 20-year average for the county, I can see that my equity, 229.5 today, 10 years from now becomes 347. Let's call it 350. But what about the impact if I put a mortgage on this? Let's say I put down 50%, okay? 50% at a 5.5% rate, right? Look what just happened. A mortgage balance just went onto my chart. See, 50% equity, 50% mortgage. But here's another thing that you're learning right now that people don't understand, but as soon as they see it, it's intuitive. The top line is going up, the property is becoming more valuable. But the power in this is the middle line is also going down as the mortgage is being paid off. And so the blue line, which is my equity, is growing in both directions. So a moment ago, my equity went from 229 to 350. Now I put in 116 and my equity is 250. But because I put down half, I can buy 2 of these. So my $230,000 now, instead of becoming 350 in equity, my 235 becomes 250 times 2 becomes 500. By virtue of using leverage, of controlling more property with my same amount of money, by putting down half and getting a mortgage, I increased my equity from $350,000 in 10 years to $500,000 in 10 years. That's the power of this asset class, guys.